All right, guys, I'm Taylor Sanz, CEO of Life Goal Wealth Advisors. Today, we're going to talk about the three biggest risks to the stock market in 2025. Before I start, I've got 400,000 followers between Instagram and TikTok. I'm not like every other financial guru out there. I actually have a background in finance. I've got an undergrad and graduate degree in finance. I've got a CFP, Certified Financial Planner designation, a CIMA, and I spent over a decade on Wall Street. Now I run a wealth advisory firm. So let's go to the data. Tariffs. Donald Trump says tariffs are the most beautiful word in the dictionary. Today we're going to focus on the risks that come along with imposing tariffs. In the prior video in this series, we focused on stock market concentration. So if you missed that, go back and watch it. Hit the subscribe so you don't miss anything. Tariffs. There are three main pillars to Donald Trump's agenda. One, lower taxes. That's stimulative to an economy. Number two is deregulation. Take away the red tape, make it less costly to launch new businesses. That's good for an economy. But the last one are tariffs. And most economists in history don't shed a positive light on tariffs when thinking about economic growth. But Donald Trump loves them, to state the obvious. And because of the Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, it allows the president to unilaterally, without the approval of Congress, issue tariffs on countries if it's a matter of national security. So Trump may not need someone else's okay on this. Now, the goal of tariffs to start, they are a tax on goods coming into our country, to state the obvious. The goal is to bring jobs back to the United States, make foreign-made goods more expensive, and make our own made goods in the United States more competitive, bringing jobs back here. The second thing is to correct bad behavior. So this little picture here shows fentanyl getting shipped out of China to Mexico and then crossing the border. If we're able to punish their economies, maybe those governments are able to punish the bad behavior coming out of those countries. And then the third thing is raise taxes without raising taxes on Americans. So bring in tax dollars via tariffs, via goods coming into our country from a foreign entity, have the foreign entity pay for it. At least those are the goals in theory. What history tells us is that tariffs have not been an economic boom whatsoever. So the most broad-reaching tariffs we've ever imposed in this country were the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. So Senator Reed Smoot and Representative Willis Hawley came up with the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act that was enacted in 1930. And what they essentially did was they saw economic weakness coming that ended up the Great Depression in 1929, and they said, hey, let's protect our farmers. We don't want to import anything from outside. We want all of our domestic consumption to come from US-based agriculture. So we'll slap 20% tariffs on all these different countries around the world, and therefore nothing will come in from there. It'll boost job growth here in the United States. Backfired massively, because what happens was those foreign countries said, you tariff us, we'll tariff you. And 25 foreign countries put reciprocal tariffs on the United States. And what happened was global trade declined 65% between 1929 and 1934. This is broadly known as one of the principal causes of the Great Depression. And what did the result in the stock market look like? Well, had you put $100 in the S&P 500 in 1929, after being down 8.5, 25, 43, and 8, you would have had $35.77 at the end of 1932. That's brutal. But that was a long time ago, and maybe times have changed. But they haven't. The last tariff battle that we were in was imposed by Trump, and it was in 2018. And if you remember, the focal point of Trump's tariffs were on Chinese bringing steel into the market and dumping it in the United States and ruining the US steel market. Well, guess what happened? He imposed tariffs. The market hemorrhaged, did not like it. And here's the S&P 500's returns throughout 2018, and in the year down over 6%. So it wasn't taken well by the market. And I have a good buddy who runs a manufacturing facility where they use a lot of steel. And what they did was they saw steel prices go up with these tariffs. To state the obvious, do you think they ate that cost and their profit margin got squeezed? No, they passed that cost directly along to the consumer, and it inflated the price of that underlying good. So the tariffs that are being talked about right now, there's three main targets. So one being China, two being Mexico. And you can very easily make the case that that would be out of national security implications. China, whether it's intellectual property theft or fentanyl. And when you look at Mexico, that can be anything from border restrictions, drugs coming across the border, what have you. So national security is certainly a concern there. I'm not sure you can make that for Canada, but I think that if Trump wants to, he'll try to make that case. But if we are successful in bringing jobs back to the US by imposing tariffs on these underlying countries, which these three countries are the largest trading partners to the United States, and trade numbers being floated out there, anything from 20 to 200% tariffs. So, yes, the cost of goods will be going up, and hopefully they don't reciprocate back to us. But even if we are able to successfully bring jobs back to the United States, you have to realize labor is one of the massive input costs to everything that's created. And when you look at how much you pay a US worker, $80,000 versus Canada at 54 versus China at 13 and Mexico at 12, if labor is one of the massive input costs, what do you anticipate the price that we're able to produce something in the United States versus somewhere else? Obviously, the cost is going to go up, and that's going to be inflationary. So tariffs in reality have two reactions by the market. One, it could be inflationary, where if we, tariff you, you tariff us, tit for tat, everyone sees higher prices, we bring jobs back to the United States, they're higher cost jobs, forcing up the price of goods, that's inflation. Or it can become a Great Depression scenario where it just becomes demand destructionary. I know that's not a word, but essentially what happens is you tariff everywhere, and then all of a sudden people say, I can't afford anything, and they just put their hands in their pockets. And that is when the economies begin to slow. So tariffs are something that really create a risk to the market right now. So when you think about the top three risks of the stock market in 2025, the first video we talked about concentration in the stock market. Here we talk about tariffs. And for the third one, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss it because it'll be coming out real soon. And then again, as always, here are the disclosures. Thanks so much for subscribing. We'll talk again soon.